And staying in France, a ruling by a criminal court in Paris there is stirring controversy. Now, a man arrested earlier this month for painting 20 red swastikas on buildings along one of the capital's busiest streets has been charged for refusal of signaling and degradation of classified property. But the court agreed with the prosecutor in denying that the act had an anti-Semitic character because he did not specifically target buildings identified as linked to the Jewish community. Now, the International Legal Forum has called on the French legal system to reverse that ruling, saying it will just end up encouraging more such anti-Semitic incidents. Well, joining us now in studio is advocate Yifa Segal, director of the International Legal Forum. And Yifa, thanks for joining us on the Rundown. Let's talk about this case and what's at stake here, because it's really not just a case about vandalism and graffiti.
No, it's not. So the question is, how do our societies, or more, how do the legal systems treat hate crimes, treat anti-Semitic crimes? What kind of signals do they send to the population? I mean, is it okay to kind of incite against Jews and use anti-Semitic symbols if you kind of vicariously do it on a main street and not specifically in synagogues or in Jewish institutions? It's like a roadmap on how to kind of circumvent hate crime laws, because the question here is it just vandalism, or is there like aggravating circumstances like hate crime or anti-Semitism more specifically? So I believe this is like, in a way, it kind of signals a lot of people that it's okay just as long as you're not too blunt about it. So you stretch the line further and further and further, and that's, I think, the scary.
Right, I presume there are legal consequences here, because if it's just vandalism, it would carry less punishment than, say, if it was a hate crime, surely.
Of course, yeah.
Right. Now, let's broaden this out a little bit, because if you look at France and its history, there seems to be a bit of a reluctance among some elements in the establishment, certainly in the legal establishment, to recognize anti-Semitic motivations and hate crimes against Jews. I mean, the most notorious is the murder of this elderly woman, Sarah Halimi, who was thrown from her window, an attacker screaming Allah Akbar, and they ruled it had been a neighborly dispute. Is there some particular issue in France?
It was even more outrageous than that. I mean, they basically gave this murderer, I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, he killed that woman, throwing her out of her window just because he was high on marijuana. Now, you tell me, how does that kind of excuse a person for the most heinous crime possible from being prosecuted?
Right. So, but what is the issue? Why do you think, I mean, I guess we're in some area of speculation, that France is, or at least some elements in France, have this attitude, or reluctant to account for the anti-Semitism as an element in these crimes?
So I think, it's a guess, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong. But I think it's an attempt not to aggravate the Muslim population there. I mean, both crimes that you talked about were committed by Muslim men. And so maybe it's an attempt not to, they think maybe they're calming things down by not calling it hate crime or not creating some kind of tension between those two communities. Although I think it's a very narrow type of a way to look at the situation. I think it's going to cause more hate crime. It's going to create, the sensation that people can just get away with these type of crimes. I mean, if I want to go and kill a Jew, all I have to do is just smoke some marijuana, and then I'll be, free on my way. That's basically, how the roadmap that the courts are now kind of creating for these type of hate crimes in France. And I think it's very, very alarming. They should be looking at the greater picture. They need to kind of send a message that this will not be accepted. They need to draw a line. And unfortunately, this is not what we're seeing. We're not seeing that at all.
Though we do see the government maybe belatedly, and maybe Emmanuel Macron even almost admitting some of your argument in his reaction to this killing of this school teacher, and saying that maybe there has to be more action taken against not just people who are actually committing violent crimes, but those who are inciting them.
Yes, I agree with you. And we've also seen the French government legislate. They've passed the IRA definition of anti-Semitism in their parliament, and they've legislated other laws that kind of forbid BDS or incitement and other laws. So there is this tension within the French government. Unfortunately, we see the courts often, as the examples that you mentioned, are not following that path. I think there's a lot of problem with the immigrants community in France, also in Europe, and I really hope that they're gonna take a harder line, let's say, with dealing with these issues, so it won't get any worse than they already are.
Right. Let's talk about this specific case. Is it likely the court would reverse that ruling, or is there pressure being put not just by the International Legal Forum, but the Jewish community within France itself?
Yeah, from what we understand, there is pressure. There was a lot of outrage about it. I mean, you have to understand that there has to be an appeal now in order for, an appeal court to change the ruling. So we're not sure that that's going to happen. But if enough pressure is put on the system, if a lot of people, parliamentarians, senior officials are going to come out against it, then hopefully, at least maybe not in this case, but in other cases in the future, we're going to see a change, I hope, in the way that they're treated, these type of cases.
Right, and now you're representing the International Legal Forum here, is involved in Israel. Are you in contact with French lawyers there that are going to be pressing this?
The International Legal Forum is a legal hub for lawyers, and we're active in 32 countries around the world. There's a network of lawyers that are working against anti-Semitism. We're involved in litigation in many countries around the world. We just filed a litigation against anti-Semitism in Canada in a groundbreaking case. So we're very involved. We have a network of a lot of lawyers, also in France. Luckily, the French community is very independent, is very strong, is very vocal. So I hope they're going to continue with this line of really pushing hard against these type of decisions. And we're here to help with whatever we can, wherever we can help. So we're always happy to do that.
All right. Well, I presume that this is going to be given the French legal system, this is going to end up being a fairly long, outdrawn case, but at least certainly the effort is being made. And as I'm going to reiterate, the French government, maybe after the killing of this school teacher, is finally taking some action, especially against hate sites and spreading of incitement, not just waiting till it actually becomes a violent crime. Yifa Segal from the International Legal Forum, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
On The Rundown.